Welcome to our deep dive, all about, well, difficult people.
That's right.
We've got a bunch of stuff to go through. Excerpts from a book, the conclusion. Oh, and there's a whole chapter on exercises, too. We should try some of those out, maybe.
Yeah, those could be fun.
So basically, this is all about giving you, the listener, some tools to deal with those tricky people. You know the ones, I'm sure. And not just survive those encounters, but hopefully, like thrive.
Exactly. And charisma is a big part of that.
Right. So how can we use charisma to sort of navigate these personalities?
Exactly.
Okay, so the
Well,
first thing that really stood out to me was this idea of thin slicing.
oh, yeah.
You know how we all make these super quick judgments about people? It turns out there's actually like a scientific reason for it.
Yeah. It's called thin slicing. Basically, your brain's making these snap judgments just from tiny bits of information. Think about it. It's like, from an evolutionary perspective, we had to be able to quickly decide if someone was a threat or not.
Oh, yeah, I see. So it's like a survival thing. But what's so interesting is like how powerful these impressions are. They can totally influence how we see someone, even like way later.
Yeah, it's like your brain's created this mental file. And it's really hard to change that first assessment.
So first impressions really do matter more than we probably think. So how can we use this to our advantage, like especially with those tough people?
Well, knowing that this is happening so quickly means we have to be really intentional about the signals we're sending out right from the beginning. So our handshake, our posture, even our tone of voice, it all matters.
It's like we're walking billboards or something.
Exactly. So if you want to make a good impression, especially on someone who might be, well, difficult,
Yeah.
you have to come across as warm, confident, and authentic, like right away.
Right. So those first few seconds are super important.
Totally.
Now, there's this other concept that I thought was really fascinating, the idea of tribal wear.
Uh-huh.
And it makes sense when you think about it. We tend to trust people who are, well, kind of like us. It's like a tribal instinct or something.
Right. It's like we feel safer when we're around people who share our values, our beliefs, even our style.
Yeah, totally.
So if you like adapt your style, how you dress, your language, even how you act to match the tribe you're with can be really powerful. People are just more receptive when they feel like you're one of them.
It's like you're speaking their language.
Exactly.
I remember reading about this study, I think it was American Express. They sent their salespeople to colleges dressed like students.
Oh, right.
And their sales went way up.
Yeah, I remember that. It's like proof that tribal wear actually works.
Exactly. So if you're trying to connect with someone, especially a difficult person, think about how you can subtly align your style with theirs. It could make a big difference.
For sure.
It's not about being thick, though.
No, not at all.
It's about finding like common ground, creating a feeling of, shared identity.
Exactly.
And sometimes that can be as simple as a handshake.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how much you can communicate with just that one gesture.
I know, right? It's something we often don't even think about. But a good handshake can make you seem like more agreeable, conscientious, even emotionally stable.
Yeah, but we all know those handshakes like the dead fish or the knuckle cruncher.
Ugh, I hate those.
Nobody likes those. So what makes a good handshake then?
Well, you definitely want to avoid those extremes.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance. A firm grip, but not crushing. And then just a gentle pump from the elbow.
Oh.
And of course, you got to make eye contact.
So right.
You want to convey strength and warmth at the same time.
Right. It's like a little dance or something.
Exactly.
When it's done right, it sets a positive tone for the whole interaction.
For sure.
Okay, so speaking of nonverbal cues, let's talk about listening. And I don't mean just like waiting for your turn to talk.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I mean
Yeah.
like really listening, being present, making eye contact, nodding, asking questions, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about making the other person feel heard and understood.
Right.
But here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes the most charismatic thing you can do is let the other person interrupt you.
Really? I would have thought that would be like a sign of weakness.
I know, right?
Like,
It seems counterintuitive.
yeah.
But when you let someone interrupt, especially if they're really into what they're saying, it can actually make them feel like more right,
Even if they're wrong.
even if they're wrong.
Wow. So you're validating their perspective. And that makes them feel valued.
Right. You can actually lead to a more productive conversation in the end.
That's really interesting.
So instead of arguing or trying to correct them, which can make them defensive,
Oh, yeah.
when you allow them to feel right, it creates like this feeling of safety.
I get it. It's like you're disarming them.
Exactly. And that makes them more open to your ideas too.
It's so clever. It's like you're playing, mental judo or something.
Yeah, kind of.
This reminds me of that story about Benjamin Franklin. He was like a master of persuasion, right?
Right. So,
And he found that asking an adversary for a favor was more effective than doing them a favor.
really?
Yeah, I know.
It's like reverse psychology or something.
Exactly. And he figured out that when we do someone a favor, they feel indebted. But when we ask for a favor and they do it, their brains go nuts trying to figure out why they did something nice for someone they might not even like.
I guess that makes sense.
And then they end up liking us more.
Wow. The human brain is wild.
I know. So it's not about manipulation or anything. It's about, understanding how people's minds work and using that knowledge to build better relationships.
Exactly. And that's a big part of charisma.
Right. So let's get into another brain thing then, this connection between sensations, places, and people.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out our brains are wired to create these associations, like linking feelings to people and places.
Be crazy, right?
So it means our interactions aren't just about, like, the words we say.
No, not at all.
It's also about the emotions we create.
Exactly. It's like our brains are constantly weaving these webs of association.
Okay, so do you remember that story about the rising stars at that accounting firm?
Yeah, I think so.
They were really competent,
Hmm.
but nobody liked them.
Why not?
Well, they were always pointing out mistakes.
Oh, right.
And that made people feel anxious and, like, inadequate.
So it's like they were brilliant, but not charismatic.
Right. They weren't creating positive associations.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's not just about being right. It's about making people feel good when they're around you.
That's charisma.
Exactly.
Okay, so one really powerful way to do that is through what our source calls visionary charisma.
Oh, interesting.
It's about using vivid imagery, metaphors, stories, to make your communication more memorable.
Like a good storyteller.
Exactly. Like, remember Steve Jobs unveiling the iPod Nano?
Yeah, yeah.
He pulled it out of his jeans pocket and he's like, it's as light as 8 quarters. Brilliant.
Oh, that was classic Steve Jobs.
He knew how to capture people's imaginations.
He did.
Our brains are wired to respond to images, so when you can paint those pictures with your words, it's super powerful.
Like you're speaking directly to their emotions.
Right. It's bypassing the logic and going straight to the heart.
I love that.
So we've covered a lot, from first impressions and tribalware to handshakes and how our brains make these crazy associations.
It's a lot to think about.
I know, right?
And there's more to come, too.
Oh, yeah. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll keep exploring those charismatic techniques and how you can use them even in the toughest situations.
Looking forward to it. So we've talked a lot about external stuff like first impressions and body language.
Yeah.
But there's also like an inner game to charisma. What's going on inside your head.
Right. It's like you can have all the right techniques, but if you're not feeling confident, it's not going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that inner critic can be really loud, especially when you're dealing with difficult people. Those voices that tell you you're not good enough or smart enough or charming enough.
Oh, I know those voices. It's like they get louder when you need your confidence the most.
Totally. And the more you listen to them, the more it shows. Your shoulders slump, your voice gets shaky, you avoid eye contact, and suddenly all that charisma you've been working on just disappears.
Yeah. It's like you're sabotaging yourself.
Exactly. So how do we silence that inner critic? How do we tap into that confidence and warmth even when it feels hard?
Yeah, how do we do that?
Well, the first step is recognizing that uncomfortable emotions are normal.
Wait, so like feeling anxious or stressed, that's normal.
Totally normal. It's part of being human. It's actually a legacy of our, survival instincts.
Oh, right, like that fight or flight response.
Exactly. Our ancestors needed that adrenaline rush to escape from predators or fight rivals. But these days, those same responses get triggered by, social situations, like dealing with a difficult boss or giving a presentation.
So our bodies are reacting like we're facing a tiger when really it's just a meeting.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to recognize those feelings without letting them control us. And one way to do that is to, think about other people who've gone through similar stuff, especially people you admire.
So it's about remembering that you're not alone in this.
Exactly. Everyone feels those things sometimes.
Even the most charismatic people.
Even them. It's part of the human experience.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. So discomfort is normal. What's next?
Next is neutralizing those negative thoughts. The doubts and insecurities that sabotage your confidence.
But those thoughts can be so persistent. It's like they're on repeat.
I know. It's like our brains have this negativity bias,
What do you mean by that?
It means we tend to focus on the negative stuff, even when there's plenty of positive stuff to focus on. Like, let's say you're a graphic designer
Okay.
and your client loves your work. They're like, my boss is going to love this.
Hmm.
But then they mention that their boss wasn't initially thrilled with the designs, and that one little negative comment just sticks with you.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's like you forget all the good stuff and just obsess over the one negative thing.
That's the negativity bias in action.
Wow. And that can really mess with your confidence.
Totally. So how do we deal with this negativity bias?
Yeah, good question.
Well, there's this technique called rewriting reality. It's about consciously choosing to reinterpret a situation in a more positive light.
Mm.
So in that example with the graphic designer, she could choose to focus on the fact that her client was willing to fight for her work.
Oh, right. Because he believed in it.
Exactly. She could see it as an opportunity to win over a tough audience.
So it's about taking control of the story in your head.
Exactly. Choosing to focus on the positive possibilities.
Mm.
And the cool thing is, your brain is incredibly adaptable. It's constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences and thoughts.
So if you practice focusing on the positive, you're actually retraining your brain to be more optimistic.
Exactly. You're building those positive neural pathways.
Okay, so we've talked about accepting discomfort and rewriting reality. Is there anything else we can do to shift our mindset?
Absolutely. Another powerful technique is visualization.
Oh, yeah, like athletes use that, right?
Exactly. Athletes, musicians, performers, they all use it. It's about creating a vivid mental picture of yourself succeeding in a specific situation.
So if I'm nervous about a presentation, I should visualize myself giving the presentation like really confidently.
Yes, and not just going through the motions. You want to feel those causative emotions like you're actually there. The
Hmm.
more detailed and emotionally engaging it is, the more powerful it
Just
is.
like a mental rehearsal.
Right. And the research shows that when you visualize yourself doing something, your brain actually activates some of the same neural pathways as if you were really doing it.
Wow, so it's like a workout for your brain.
Exactly. And that workout can have a real impact on your behavior.
I love that. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You visualize success, and then your brain and body make it happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that confidence will show in your body language,
Yeah.
your voice, your whole presence,
Hmm.
which makes you more charismatic.
So visualization is another tool we can use to tap into that charisma. What else can we do to cultivate that warmth and presence that draws people in?
Well, that's where gratitude, goodwill, and compassion come in. These are qualities that a lot of charismatic people have. They genuinely care about others.
Yeah, you can just feel it when you're around them. They have this positive energy that's contagious.
Right. And while some people might be naturally more inclined towards those qualities, you can actually cultivate them through practice.
Hmm.
One of the most powerful ways to do that is through gratitude.
Like appreciating what you have.
Exactly. And our sources suggest this visualization, it's a little, well, morbid, but it can be really powerful.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's called the Imagine Your Own Funeral exercise.
Wow. Okay. That's intense.
It might sound weird, but taking a few minutes to contemplate your own mortality can actually make you feel more alive and grateful for the present moment.
I guess it puts things in perspective.
Exactly. It reminds you of what really matters.
Uh-huh.
And that can have a huge impact on how you interact with people.
You approach them with more generosity and patience.
Exactly.
Okay, so gratitude is a good foundation for warmth. What about goodwill and compassion? How do those fit in?
Well, goodwill is about wanting the best for other people, genuinely caring about their well-being. And when you feel that, it shows.
So it's not just about saying the right things, it's about feeling it.
Exactly. And people can sense that authenticity. It makes them feel valued and connected to you.
It's like you're building trust.
Right. And compassion is kind of an extension of goodwill. It's about recognizing that we're all human, even those who are difficult.
So even when someone's being rude or unreasonable, you try to see them as a person who's struggling.
Exactly. You don't have to condone their behavior, but you can choose to approach them with more understanding.
It's like choosing compassion over judgment.
Right. And that can completely change the dynamic. It helps you stay calm, even when they're not.
It's like meeting them with an open heart instead of, getting defensive.
Yeah, exactly. And that openness creates space for dialogue and understanding, even when it's hard.
So gratitude, goodwill, compassion, They're not just nice feelings, they're actually tools for being more charismatic.
Exactly. They're essential for building connection and influence. But there's one more piece, self-compassion.
Oh, right. Being kind to yourself. That's a tough one.
It is for a lot of people,
Hmm.
especially those who are, high achieving, always pushing themselves.
They can be their own worst critics.
Totally. And that inner critic can be so damaging. It can stop you from taking risks or going after what you want.
It's like you're holding yourself back.
Exactly. And that negativity can spill over into your interactions with others. Remember Helen, that client we talked about? She was confident, but she had trouble connecting with people.
Yeah, I remember. She was smart and organized, a good listener even, but she wasn't very warm.
And that lack of warmth came from a lack of self-compassion. She was so hard on herself, and that created a barrier between her and other people.
So it's not just about being kind to others, it's about being kind to yourself, too.
Exactly. When you can accept yourself, flaws and all, that warmth radiates outwards.
But how do you do that? Like, how do you actually become more self-compassionate?
Well, one practice is a kind of loving kindness meditation. It's called metta.
Meta.
It's about cultivating feelings of warmth and goodwill towards yourself and others.
So it's like sending positive vibes first to yourself and then out to the world.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That's beautiful.
And even if it feels a little awkward at first, the research shows that it can have a real impact on your well-being and your relationships.
That's amazing. So we've covered so much in this episode, from first impressions to handshakes to silencing that inner critic and cultivating gratitude and compassion.
It's been quite a journey.
Hmm.
But all this internal work is just one part of charisma.
Right.
In the next part, we'll explore how all this translates into, like, outward behavior, the body language of charisma.
Okay, I can't wait. Okay, so we've done all this inner work, getting our minds right, but how do we actually express all that charisma, on the outside?
That's where body language comes in. It's super important.
Right, like actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And especially when we're stressed, our body language can betray us.
So let's talk about the body language of charisma. Like, how do we actually convey presence, power, and warmth?
Okay, so first let's talk about mirroring.
Mirroring.
Yeah. It's a really effective way to build rapport.
Uh-huh.
You basically subtly match the other person's body language.
So, like, if they lean in, you lean in.
Exactly. If they cross their legs, you cross yours. It creates this sense of synchronicity.
Like you're on the same wavelength.
Right. It's something we often do naturally when we feel connected to someone,
Hmm.
but you can also do it intentionally.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're, like, hacking the system.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Remember Darius, the guy who runs that entrepreneurial network in Africa?
Yeah, I remember him.
He was meeting with his potential partner, and he decided to try mirroring.
How did it go?
It went great. They hit it off immediately. By the end of the meeting, they had a deal.
Wow, that's amazing. So it really works.
It can be really powerful, especially if the other person is, feeling nervous or unsure of themselves. It can make them feel more comfortable.
Oh, that makes sense. But I
Yeah.
guess there are times when mirroring wouldn't be a good idea.
Right. Like if someone's being aggressive or hostile, mirroring their body language would just escalate things.
Yeah, I can see that. So you have to be strategic about it.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move on to power. How do you project confidence and authority, but without coming across as, arrogant or intimidating?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. So this is where the idea of being the big gorilla comes in. It's a visualization technique
Mm.
where you imagine yourself as, well, a big gorilla,
A big girl.
taking up space, commanding attention.
I love that. It's like owning your space.
Exactly. So instead of shrinking back, you expand your presence.
But how do you do that without, being overbearing?
It's all about balance. It starts with your posture. Think about how a gorilla stands.
Uh.
Tall, chest out, taking up space.
Right, but most of us like slouch, especially when we're tired or
Oh,
stressed.
still me too. So you have to be mindful of your posture throughout the day. A good exercise is to stand up tall, stretch your arms, expand your chest, roll your shoulders back.
It's like you're physically embodying that power.
And it's not just physical. Research shows that when you adopt those expansive postures, it actually changes your hormones. You literally feel more confident.
Wow, that's amazing. So your body language affects your mind, and your mind affects your body language.
Exactly. It's a loop. So when you're feeling stressed, your body naturally wants to contract. But if you consciously expand, you can shift your internal state.
Okay, that makes sense. So posture is key for power. What about warmth? How do you communicate that non-verbally?
Eye contact is huge.
Oh, yeah, but what kind of eye contact?
It's about the quality. not just the quantity.
What do you mean?
You want to avoid that intense stare, the kind that makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, like you're trying to burn a hole through them with your eyes.
Right. Instead, you want a soft, gentle gaze.
It's about really seeing the other person.
Exactly. And feeling that connection can be incredibly powerful, even for difficult people.
It's like you're disarming them with your kindness.
Right. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've talked about first impressions, tribal wear, silencing that inner critic, mastering the handshake, using powerful body language.
It's a lot to take in, but it's so fascinating.
The main thing to remember is that charisma isn't some magical gift. It's a set of skills, and anyone can learn them.
That's so encouraging. So as we go out into the world, facing those inevitable, difficult people,
But remember to be the big gorilla. Take up space, radiate confidence, but keep your eyes soft, your heart open.
it's a powerful combination.
It is. And it can transform even the most difficult encounters into opportunities for connection and growth.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.